Welcome to our first lecture in financial management. In this lecture, we will have a brief introduction to financial management in general, right? So here's our plan for today. This is our agenda. This is our outline for today's discussion, okay? So, of course, we're going to learn about financial management, about finance, more specifically, business finances, and something about financial manager. As a result of learning something from this course, perhaps in future you can become one of those successful financial managers. We're going to learn about the goals of a financial manager. What is the main goal of financial management? Okay, that's also mentioned over here. We'll also have a look at different forms of business organization, and we'll have a look at agency problems, the problem related to control of corporations. Okay, so as a result of listening to this video, as a result of learning from this video class, you'll learn some basics of financial management, how some decisions are made, and you'll learn about the role or about the goal of the financial manager. The goal of financial management. You'll also learn about some of the implications, financial implications and legal implications of different forms of business organization, right? And in relation to agency theory, as we mentioned over here, in relation to agency problem, we'll learn something about the conflict of interest between the company owners and company managers. Okay, so let's jump in first, starting with general finance, the areas of finance. Okay, there are many different areas in finance, including some of the following: corporate finance or business finance or financial management. This course, remember, is called Financial Management 1. These are all three different names for basically the same area in finance, where you are learning to become, in future, to become a financial manager. Perhaps one of the highest positions for this role is something like a CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Okay. Another area in finance is an area related to investments. Another area is related to financial institutions. And there is another area related to international finance. So we're going to talk about each of these very, very briefly. But of course, all of this semester and next semester, Financial Management 2, is about this first area over here: business finance, corporate finance, or financial management. Three names of the same thing. So investments is mostly related to basically choosing which stocks and bonds to invest into. And that's basically different kinds of financial assets, right? And one main task when you are choosing which bonds and stocks to invest into is evaluating or calculating the value of these financial assets, right? You want to invest into things that are generally giving you a better value at a relatively lower risk. Yeah. So that's what investments area in finance is generally related to. And if you learn more on that, there are a lot of courses in our international finance department in this finance area. If you learn more on that, the job opportunities would be something like a stockbroker or a financial analyst, financial advisor, a portfolio manager, a security analyst. By the way, a lot of my students do get a license as a security analyst. All right, so that could be quite interesting. Another area in finance is related to financial institutions. There are different kinds of financial institutions, which are basically firms, which are basically companies that work in finance-related areas, such as banks, commercial banks, central banks, right? Insurance companies are also related to financial companies. Mutual funds, not mentioned here, but we can add them over here as well. Mutual funds, right? Different kinds of investment funds, brokerage firms, stock brokers, right? So all of these are examples of financial institutions, and of course, job opportunities is working in those financial institutions. If you learn how banks work, if you know how mutual funds work, if you learn how insurance companies work, in future you might get a job in those companies, And again, here in our department, we do have a course called Financial Institutions. For a whole semester, you will learn, if you take that class, for a whole semester you'll learn about the details of working of each of these companies, right? And international finance is basically related to all of the areas we mentioned so far, we mentioned above, but with a specification for international deals with other countries, where you have to travel a lot, right? So that's kind of important to know something about other countries, maybe some political risks in other countries, and something about exchange rates. And because the work is related to other countries, maybe knowing other languages is also very, very helpful. Okay? So 3 main areas in finance plus international finance kind of related to any of these areas. Whether you work as a financial manager in a company, whether you work as an analyst in a financial institution or an investment analyst for a big investment fund, right? All of these might have some business engagements in other countries. So all of these might have some international aspect. Okay. So next, why would you want to study finance? Well, I don't have to convince you because you're already students in finance department, but basically I think it's beneficial for anyone to study finance, because whether you're an engineer, whether you're a medical doctor, whether you're anybody else who is not related to finance, we all deal with money quite often, quite frequently, right? For example, for our personal finance, we all face retirement sometime in the future, right? We all have to pay for college education for ourselves as students, or maybe for our kids' college education, university education, right? So all of these are finance areas related to anybody, regardless of the occupation, regardless of who they are, what they are, a medical doctor, an engineer, or anybody else, right? And of course, finance is very, very, very beneficial if you're working anywhere within business, right? Marketing, for example, uh, market research will be very beneficial if you have some understanding of finance, right? Because within market research, if you want to do some budgeting, how much it will cost you to expand your business operations from, I don't know, from your local country into the Japanese market, right? If you know some basics of finance, your marketing understanding will be improved as well. Same, of course, with management, accounting, and other business-related areas, right? So talking a bit more specifically about business finance or financial management or corporate finance, the things that we're going to discuss this semester and next semester, the main questions that financial managers would ask themselves is what long-term investments should the firm undertake? For example, maybe there is a plan to build a third factory, and the question is, should the firm actually make that long-term investment, right? Because building a factory is a bit of a long-term commitment, right? Another question would be where to get the money for these long-term investments, right? Should the firm issue more stocks, sell those stocks, issue more shares, sell those shares, and raise the money in that way to build that factory? Or should the firm just go borrow the money from the bank? Where to get the money for those long-term investments, right? And thirdly, how to manage shorter term, day-to-day financials, inflows and outflows to make sure that the company always has enough cash, right? So we're going to talk about all of these in the following chapters over the 1 or 2 semesters, okay? So as I mentioned, the financial manager is basically what is the role that this class will prepare you for. There are different levels of financial managers, right? Probably the top one is something like a chief financial officer, CFO in a company, okay? There are a lot of other levels as well, such as a treasurer who basically controls the financial assets within the company, or the controller who oversees, who is looking after taxes and accounting, right? Here's an example of an organizational chart of a large corporation By the way, in this class, Financial Management 1, and in the next semester course of Financial Management 2, we'll mostly talk about financial managers in large corporations, okay, and not any other small mom and pop firms. Okay, so in large corporations, you'll have an organizational chart, something like this, where you have the board of directors at the top, then you have the president or the CEO, chief executive officer, maybe another kind of officer responsible for the main operations within the company, like making toys or whatever is the company making, right? And after that, you'll have basically three main roles. One of them is a financial role. That's perhaps one of the highest roles of a financial manager, right? So as I mentioned, the decisions that a financial manager has to make relate to long-term investments. The name for those decisions is capital budgeting. Okay. Another kind of question that we have also mentioned is capital structure, where to get the money for these long-term investments, right? Should we borrow the money, in which case we have debt in the company, right? We owe other banks some money, or should we issue more shares within the company? Shares are equity, as you will learn over the next several weeks, right? So this decision of where to get the money for these long-term investments changes capital structure, the balance of how much debt the company has and how much equity the company has, right? So this balance between debt and equity is called capital structure. Okay, it's also relevant to these managerial decisions as a financial manager. And as we mentioned, the shorter-term, day-to-day decisions of making sure the company always has enough cash for daily operations, that is called working capital management. Okay, working capital is basically short-term financial assets in the company. Okay. Next, moving on to different forms of business organization, right? There are many types of different forms of business organization, but basically three main types: proprietorship, partnership, and corporation. Again, as I mentioned, this course, financial management, mostly focuses on corporations, on large companies, not on any small firms owned by one or several people. Corporations are all owned by thousands and thousands or millions of people. Okay, so these are the companies that we'll look at in this course. But firstly, let's go through all of these three types of forms of ownership. Really briefly, proprietorship is a company owned by one person. The advantages is that it's very easy to start this kind of company, but the disadvantage, there are several. Main is perhaps unlimited liability, right? So if the company goes into trouble, right, then the business owner is responsible for all the company's debts, right? Even if the business owner, for example, loves his car and doesn't want to sell the car for the company's debts, because he's the only owner, because proprietorship has unlimited liability, then his car would also have to be sold if the company is in trouble, okay? Even though that's his perhaps a personal car. A partnership is basically similar to proprietorship. The only difference is that it can be owned by several people, right? It's also relatively easy to start, but it also has unlimited liability. So there are advantages and disadvantages. A corporation is more like a separate person. It's like a business person, right? A McDonald's, for example, is a corporation. Newmont Mining, that's the largest gold mining company in the world, is a corporation, right? And I can buy shares, I can buy stocks in McDonald's and Newmont Mining, meaning that I will be the owner of that company. I will be the owner of 0.00000000037% of that company. So I'm one of the owners, right? But if the company goes under, if the company goes into trouble, I don't have to sell my car to help the company with the troubles. So there is limited liability. The debts only apply to the assets within the company, not to the assets held by the owners. Okay. But of course, there are disadvantages to corporations, higher taxation compared to partnerships and proprietorships, right? And corporations have many different names, especially in different companies, a corporation or joint stock company or public limited company, a limited liability company. All those basically are different names for the same thing. Okay. And as I said, this course prepares you to make financial managerial decisions, right? But how do you make those decisions? Of course, you make those decisions with a goal in mind, right? So what is the goal of the financial manager? Is it to maximize profits of the company? Well, not necessarily. Let's think of an example where you could maximize profits right now by spending less money on research. Let's say you are running a large company like HTC or Samsung, right? Every year, the company needs to spend millions and millions and billions of dollars on research on how to create new technologies. You could maximize the profits if you just don't spend any money on research. But then it's only a short-term gain. The profits this year will be higher, but in the future, you will lose the business because you can't create new technology in future. The competitors will get all the customers in the future, right? Same with minimizing costs. That's not the objective for the financial manager, right? So actually the main goal of the financial manager, let's emphasize this. Emphasizing something within the course is required by the Ministry of Education. So if you just learn one thing from all of today's class, one thing is the most important thing for today, is that the goal of the financial manager, right, is to maximize the value to the owners, okay? Is to maximize market value to the company owners. That's the main goal of the financial manager. And of course, the value of the company will be maximized not if you simply max profits right now, but if you have a more complete, more complex approach to trying to improve profits, right? Yeah, you want to cut some costs which are not necessary, but if it's an important cost, such as market research or new tech research, that's very important, right? If you want to maintain high profits in future as well, you need to spend money on research, right? So this kind of complete approach of trying to maximize the value of the whole company is the goal of the financial manager, okay? And lastly, something related to corporations is an agency theory or agency problem, okay? Because owners of a corporation are thousands and thousands and thousands or millions of people, such as owners of McDonald's. Everybody who has McDonald's shares are the owners of McDonald's, right? If I have a few McDonald's shares, I will have 0.0000003% ownership in the company, right? But I'm not actually making any decisions within the company for McDonald's, right? It's the managers who make the decisions. So there is a separation of ownership and management, right? This kind of separation does not exist for small companies, for proprietorship, for example. If there is only one owner, then he's making the decisions for the company. He's managing the company, he's also the owner, and he's making the decisions. For corporations, right, we have this separation of ownership and management, managerial decisions. And then because of this separation, there is a bit of a problem, right? Because maybe I'm the manager of a company that belongs to you. So there is a separation. You are the owner, I'm the manager, right? You want me to work hard to create a lot of value for you. But what if instead of working hard for you, for your company, I just spend millions of company money to decorate my office with extremely expensive paintings. I spend thousands and thousands of company dollars, your company dollars, on building a swimming pool for my office, right? Would I like that? Oh yes, I would like that. But you would not like that. You'd like me to work hard to maximize value for your company, right? So there's an agency problem. That's a problem of a mismatch, right? Mismatch between the interests of the principal and the interest of the agent. Okay, principal and agent. Principal is basically the party that is represented, An agent is the party that represents. In theory, I should represent you in the company because you are too busy studying for this course. You cannot manage the company, so I'm the manager. I represent you. And you are represented. Actually, this principal and agent relationship has a lot of examples outside of businesses. Let's say, for example, you have a friend, also a student, who is very shy to ask me a question. So that friend asks you to ask me that question, right? So if you ask that question for him, you are the agent here. You are representing your friend, and your friend is the principal. Your friend is being represented by you, okay? So that's the agency problem, which of course creates agency costs, and it's a big problem because you will, as an owner of the company, you'll try to spend a lot of time thinking of how to resolve that problem, of how to making sure it's in my interests to work hard in the office, not just have a swimming pool and relax in the company office, in your company office. There are many ways to trying to resolve this agency problem. Maybe the salary that I get, the compensation, the money that I get from your company will depend on how well the company is doing, right? So that's one way. There are a lot of other ways, but generally now you are aware of this agency problem, agency theory, all right? So that generally concludes the new material for today. I hope you enjoyed this class. But there's something else you need to complete for today. Let's move on to Moodle. As you see over here, there is an assignment for your first week for today. Okay. Actually, it's unavailable for you right now. It will become available for you soon. Okay, starting from 9:50 in the morning on the 1st of October. So what you have to do is, after watching both of the videos for today, the second video will appear here. You need to go to this week 1 forum. Click here. Inside that forum, you will see this question, this discussion. There is one discussion inside the forum. The discussion is talking about how will learning financial management help you in your future career. Okay, this is part of this grading. I talked about the grading in the previous video. This is part of this grading. So what you need to do is click on this question, scroll down a little, and give your reply over here. Click on reply and answer how learning financial management will help you in your future career. Okay, that's an open-ended question. Each of you will have to give your answer. All right, so just post it, and underneath this question I will see many questions from all of you guys. All right, I'm going to delete this example. There you are. That's an assignment for today. Have a nice day.